Merry Christmas and Happy Holidays, everyone, and welcome to my Christmas and Holiday Season 2021 NFL Mock Draft. I made my last mock draft about a month ago now on Thanksgiving, so I decided Christmas would be a great time to make another. I love the NFL Draft, and if you also love the NFL Draft, make sure to subscribe for more draft content as we get closer and closer to the 2021 NFL Draft. Before I make my picks, I just want to go over some things. First off, the order I used in this mock draft was my projected order for how I think the season will end. Also, if you just want to see who your team picks or if you just want to jump around a bit, check the description or pinned comment for timestamps. I don't really have anything else to say, so let's get right into it at number 1, where the Jacksonville Jaguars are on the clock. The Jaguars have been pretty awful this season, but for a long time it looks like they would have the second pick in the draft. That was, of course, until the Jets beat the Rams. The Jaguars will likely have a new head coach at this point, and they may decide to move on from Gardner Minshew as well. Even when he's been healthy, the Jags haven't started Minshew in some games this season, which tell me they will select a quarterback with this pick, and because of the Jets' win, they will be able to select the best quarterback and best player in the draft class in Trevor Lawrence. Whoever has the first pick in this year's draft is going to select Trevor Lawrence. It's that simple. Trevor Lawrence is one of the best quarterback prospects in a long time. Lawrence has been a 3-year starter at Clemson, and he has been fantastic in every season. He has great arm talent and is a very accurate passer. He's a good leader and has improved as a runner in the past year or so as well. Lawrence is easily the best player in the draft class and could be an NFL star for a long time. The Jets are up at pick number 2, and pretty much everybody thought this team would finish the season 0-16 and end up with the first pick in the draft, but in perfect Jets fashion, they won a game right before the end of the year, and now they won't be able to select the generational talent in Trevor Lawrence. I think it's pretty likely the Jets will select a quarterback even if they don't end up with the first pick, and even though they can't take Lawrence, they'll be able to take another extremely good quarterback prospect in Justin Fields. Fields has been a bit disappointing this season, but that is only because he had some of the highest standards in college football. Fields may not be as good as Lawrence, but he is still an extremely talented player. Fields is having a pretty good season, and he had a great season last year as well. Fields is a very good scrambler and rarely turns the ball over, as he only threw 8 interceptions in his college football career. Fields has pretty good arm talent and is an accurate passer. The Jets will be looking for a new franchise quarterback this offseason, and Fields is one of the best players to do so. The Cincinnati Bengals are up at number 3, and there's a good chance this team will finish with only 2 wins for the second straight season, but I believe it is a much more positive 2-win season than it was last year. Joe Burrow was arguably the offensive rookie of the year before he tore his ACL, and if the Bengals are able to continue to put talented players around him, the Bengals could be a dangerous team a few years down the line. This team has a few big needs, but it is pretty clear that offensive line is the biggest, so with this pick they take the best offensive lineman in the draft class, Penei Sewell. Sewell is just an incredible offensive tackle prospect, and he's probably the best since Eric Fisher back in 2013. Sewell can really do it all. He's a great run blocker and a fantastic pass blocker. In fact, in his career he's taken 1,376 snaps and has only allowed 1 sack. That is incredible. Adding an offensive tackle as good as Sewell to an offensive line as bad as the Bengals just makes perfect sense, and if Sewell's on the board when the Bengals pick, he is the obvious choice. The Carolina Panthers are up at number 4, and there are a few ways I could see them going with this pick. They could definitely go with offensive tackle here, because the Panthers will be looking for their offensive tackle in the future, but I really don't think there are any offensive tackles worthy of a top 10 pick, let alone a top 5 pick, other than Penei Sewell. They could absolutely select a quarterback, because Teddy Bridgewater isn't their franchise guy, but I think he's played well enough this year that they won't pick someone early in next year's draft. They could also take a linebacker, because Micah Parsons is still on the board, and they need to replace Luke Kuechly in some way, but with this pick, I'm actually going to go with tight end Kyle Pitts. Some people may think number 5 is too early for a tight end, but Pitts is worth it. Kyle Pitts was already considered a great player coming into this year, but he has absolutely dominated the season and has been the best tight end in college football by far. Kyle Pitts is a weapon that can be used all over the offense and is extremely tough to cover. The Panthers need a true number 1 tight end, and that's something Ian Thomas hasn't been able to be over the past few years. It's not often we see a tight end being selected this early, but Pitts is an incredible player, and I think he would be a good pick for Carolina. The Los Angeles Chargers are up next, and they made a great pick early in the first round of last year's draft when they selected Justin Herbert. Herbert has been fantastic by rookie standards this season, and for the most part the Chargers' offense has been really good, which makes me believe this team needs to draft defensive players, so with this pick I have them selecting one of the best defensive players available in the draft in Gregory Rousseau. Melvin Ingram is 31 years old and is set to be a free agent after the year. I think the Chargers will let him leave and pick up his replacement in Rousseau. Rousseau opted out of this college football season, but he had 15.5 sacks last year and is one of the most talented players in this year's draft class. Next up, the Cowboys are on the clock, and there have been rumors that they'll move on from Dak Prescott and select a quarterback in the upcoming draft, but like I mentioned in my last mock draft, I just don't believe that. The Cowboys organization believe in Prescott as a player, and I think he'll play in Dallas for at least one more season. The Cowboys' biggest need right now is probably secondary, so I think they'll take cornerback Patrick Surtain II from Alabama. Surtain was solid last season, but this season he's been arguably the best cornerback in college football. Son of former NFL cornerback Patrick Surtain Sr., Surtain is a pretty physical player who reacts well to certain routes and is pretty much the undisputed best cornerback in next year's draft class. He has the ideal height and frame for an NFL cornerback prospect and often gives opposing wide receivers a hard time to get open. Surtain has dominated this season for Alabama, and he may be the best defensive player in all of college football. The Cowboys need cornerback, and Surtain is definitely the best player in this draft class to help fill that need. The Detroit Lions are on the clock at pick number 7, and being honest, I really don't know what they will do with this pick. They'll have a new head coach and general manager at this point, which makes it harder to guess than it already is. They could select a quarterback here because Matt Stafford is getting older and they may trade him this offseason, but with this pick, I think the Lions will select Jamar Chase out of LSU. The Lions' top 2 receivers, Kenny Golladay and Marvin Jones, are both set to be free agents after the year, and it is unlikely they'll be able to bring both of them back to Detroit. They might not even be able to bring back either of them, so why not take arguably the best wide receiver in this draft class? Jamar Chase also opted out of this college football season, but he was sensational last year as he won the Blitnikoff Award after leading the nation in both receiving yards and receiving touchdowns. Chase will likely be one of, if not the first wide receiver selected at the 2021 NFL Draft, and I think the Lions are a great fit. Next up is the Atlanta Falcons, and this team definitely needs pass rush help, especially edge. Former first-round pick Takk McKinley was cut earlier this season, and the Falcons are going to need someone who can bring pressure off the edge. Unfortunately for them, the number 1 edge rusher in this class, Gregory Rousseau, is off the board at this point, but the second best option isn't too bad either. Kwity Paye has had a fantastic season for the Michigan Wolverines and would be a great replacement for McKinley. Paye was pretty good last season, but he has been fantastic this year, and he has seen his draft stock rise tremendously in the past 2 months or so. I think Paye would fit very well on this Falcons defensive line, so I believe this would be a very good pick. At number 9, the Miami Dolphins are on the clock because of a trade with the Texans just over a year ago. The Dolphins have surprised a lot of people and have been a really good team this year, and they appear to have a good future ahead of them with Tua Tagovailoa and Brian Flores. I wouldn't be surprised to see the Dolphins get Tua some weapons with this pick because I do believe he needs them, but the Dolphins have 2 first-round picks and they can find him a receiver later in the round if they want to. The Dolphins do need a linebacker, and Micah Parsons is the best in the class. A do-it-all linebacker like Micah Parsons would fit perfectly in Brian Flores' defensive scheme. Micah Parsons is another very talented player who opted out of this college football season, but that really shouldn't hurt his draft stock at all. Parsons really did everything for Penn State last year. He could bring pressure, he could cover wide receivers, and so much more. I believe Parsons is the best defensive player in this draft class, and if he's on the board at number 9, I think it would be a fairly easy pick for the Dolphins to make. The New York Giants are up at number 10, and this pick is very interesting for me. I could see them taking a quarterback or maybe even a wide receiver with this pick, but I'm actually going to go with offensive tackle Alex Leatherwood. The Giants did just select an offensive tackle with the 4th pick of last year's draft, but Andrew Thomas really hasn't been too great, and at right tackle I feel like Cameron Fleming hasn't been too good either. I love Leatherwood as a prospect, but I feel like not enough people are talking about him and considering him a top offensive lineman in this class. He's a versatile player who can play all over the offensive line, which is the reason I gave the Giants Leatherwood. They can move him around the line as they wish, which would be very helpful for New York. Leatherwood has been a very impressive prospect in his college career, and I think he would make a great addition to the Giants. The 49ers are up next, and they have really just been beat up by injuries this season, but they should improve next season when they get a lot of their top players back. However, one player that likely won't come back to the 49ers is Richard Sherman. Sherman has said it is unlikely he returns to San Francisco, and there are multiple other cornerbacks on the 49ers who are set to be free agents after the year. The cornerbacks really haven't been all too good this year, so I think they'll take one here, and the best cornerback on the board at this point is Caleb Farley. Farley opted out of the college football season, but he likely did enough last year to be an early pick in this year's draft. The Philadelphia Eagles are on the clock at pick number 12, and they look like they moved on from Carson Wentz and replaced him with Jalen Hurts for good. Hurts has been fantastic in his past 2 starts, and if the Eagles can build around him, he can become their potential new franchise quarterback. The Eagles could definitely use help in the secondary, but they could also look to find their new potential franchise quarterback some weapons. Devonta Smith has been the best wide receiver in college football this season, and if he's on the board when the Eagles pick, they almost have to take him. As an Eagles fan, I really don't love the idea of the Eagles taking a wide receiver in the first round for back-to-back years, but Smith is a great player, and I do believe the Eagles still need a little bit more help at the wide receiver position. He had been good early in the season and last year, but after Jalen Waddle got injured, Smith has just been incredible, and he has the chance to win the Heisman Trophy this year. What Devonta Smith has done this season has been out of this world, and if he's available when the Eagles pick, he would be a fantastic selection. Next up, the Minnesota Vikings are on the clock, and last time I had them taking a cornerback to help out with their extremely inexperienced cornerback group, but this time I'm going to go with something different. With this pick, the Minnesota Vikings select offensive tackle Rashawn Slater. Slater is considered one of the best offensive tackles in this year's draft class because of his ability to pretty much play anywhere on the line. His primary position is tackle, but he's shown in the past that is not his only position. He has also shown his ability to hold his own against talented pass rushers, including a very good game against former Ohio State Buckeye Chase Young last year, who went on to be the second pick in the 2020 NFL Draft. The Vikings could use help all over the offensive line, and like I mentioned earlier, Slater can really play all over the offensive line. I think Slater makes sense and would be a very good pick for Minnesota. The New England Patriots are on the clock at pick number 14, and being honest, I don't think Cam Newton will come back to New England after the year. All the Patriots are doing this year is running the ball, whether that be with Newton or a running back, and I really don't believe that is how Newton wants to play football. I think he wants to throw the ball more and will leave after the season. We've only seen a small sample of Jarrett Stidham, and he hasn't proved he can be anything special. Maybe if Newton does leave, the Patriots will give him an opportunity to be the starter, but I think they would rather draft their next franchise quarterback in Zach Wilson. Wilson could be drafted a bit earlier in the draft, but when he played his toughest opponent of the year, he struggled a bit more than usual. That brought him down a bit on my draft board, but he's still an extremely talented player. After dealing with injuries in the past, Wilson has had a fantastic season this year. He can throw a very good deep ball and has a cannon of an arm. He is a good scrambler and can be dangerous as a runner. I do believe Wilson needs a bit more coaching for him to actually become a good starter, but obviously Bill Belichick is the Patriots coach, and he's arguably the best coach in NFL history. With the right coaching from Belichick, Wilson can potentially become a very good NFL quarterback. At number 15, the Las Vegas Raiders are up, and I've been making the same pick I had in my last mock draft, Christian Barmore. Barmore is a very talented player who has been good in his college years. The Raiders need defensive line help, and I believe Barmore is the best defensive tackle in this class. I said it last time, but I'll say it again. Barmore pretty much fits the mold for how the Raiders have drafted under Mike Mayock and John Gruden. A talented player at a position of need from a typically good football school, in this case Alabama. Barmore is a talented player, and I think he would fit well with Las Vegas. The Denver Broncos are up halfway through the first round, and they did a good job drafting wide receiver talent early in last year's wide receiver heavy draft class, and I feel like we could see something similar happen again this year, except at a different position. The Broncos secondary needs some more help, and it is arguably the weakest point on this team, so I see them selecting cornerback J.C. Horton out of South Carolina. Horton was having a really good year before he opted out of the rest of the college football season, and he has solidified himself as one of the best cornerbacks in this year's draft class. Horton is fantastic in coverage, and earlier this year he had a game against Auburn where he had 2 interceptions. The Broncos just need cornerback help, and Horton is a very talented prospect. The Chicago Bears are on the clock at number 17, and there are 3 ways I could see them going with this pick. The first option, and probably the most obvious, is quarterback. Nick Foles isn't the future of this team, and even though he's been playing better recently, neither is Mitch Trubisky. I think they will keep either Foles or Trubisky on the team, and then they'll sign another quarterback to add some more competition, though. The next option is wide receiver, which is what I had them going with in my last mock. I think Allen Robinson will leave the Bears after the season, and they could try and find his replacement through the draft. The third option is offensive line. This team needs offensive line help, especially at tackle, so with this pick I've been selecting Christian Darrisaw. Darrisaw has been one of the biggest risers on draft boards this season, and he has the right size and athleticism you would like in a potential offensive tackle. Darrisaw has been a very good left tackle this season, and the Bears could use some help on the offensive line. I think Darrisaw is a good fit, and this pick would make sense for the Bears. Next up at number 18, we have the Miami Dolphins for the second time in the first round, and earlier they selected an incredible prospect in Micah Parsons, but I think now is the right time for them to find Tua some weapons. The best wide receiver on the board at this point is Jalen Waddle. After a good start to the season, Waddle got injured and hasn't played for a while now, but the Dolphins have shown in the past they aren't scared of taking talented players if they're injured after they drafted Tua Tagovailoa in the first round last year. Jalen Waddle obviously went to Alabama just like Tua Tagovailoa did, and they already have some chemistry together. Pairing the two of them back up in the NFL could be dangerous for opposing defenses. Waddle is a very talented player, and some people would expect him to be drafted earlier than this, but I expect him to fall a little bit on draft day due to his injury. Waddle is very fast, and he's a good route runner and has good hands to go along with that. Waddle is also a good return man, and adding him to this Dolphins team already full of young talent would help make them a potentially great team in the future. At number 19, the Washington football team is on the clock, and I actually think the future is pretty bright for this team. Ron Rivera and Washington have looked good as of late, and this team is full of young talent like Chase Young and Antonio Gibson. One thing this team does need, though, in my opinion, is a franchise quarterback. Alex Smith has played really well in his return this season, but he is 36 years old and will likely not stay in Washington for much longer. With this pick, I think the football team will select North Dakota State quarterback Trey Lance. Trey Lance is coming from an FCS school, which makes some people doubt if he's actually talented enough to be worthy of this pick, but by watching him play, I think you can see the sheer talent. Lance only played 1 game this fall, but he was incredible last season, racking up 42 total touchdowns and 0 interceptions on the way to leading his team to an FCS National Championship win. Lance is a fantastic scrambler and throws a very good deep ball. However, it is unlikely Lance will become an immediate starter due to his lack of games this season and most of his games being played against lower quality teams. Going back to Alex Smith, like I mentioned in my last mock draft, Alex Smith topped Patrick Mahomes for a year and helped him become the player he is today. If Lance is able to sit behind Smith for a year, he can potentially become a fantastic player as well. The Jacksonville Jaguars are up at pick number 20, and in this mock draft they selected someone who they hope to be their new franchise quarterback, and I think now is the right time to give him some more protection. The Jaguars don't have a great offensive line, but Samuel Cosmi is the best offensive tackle on the board. Cosmi shines as a run blocker, but is very good as a pass blocker as well. Cosmi is very athletic for an offensive tackle and is pretty quick as well. Cosmi is a very good prospect in my opinion and would be a good pick for Jacksonville. Next up is the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and there is a possibility that Tom Brady retires after the season, but I just have the feeling that this won't be his last year in the NFL and he will play for at least one more season. I think a position where the Bucs could use some help at, though, is edge. Jason Pierre-Paul hasn't been incredible for the Buccaneers, and he is getting up there in age. Shaquille Barrett is a very good defensive end, but I do believe the Buccaneers will need at least one more talented edge rusher, so with this pick I've been selecting Joseph Ossai from Texas. Ossai is a great edge rusher who can actually also play linebacker, which would be an even bigger help for Tampa Bay. Ossai is good at bringing pressure, and he can even drop back in coverage. Ossai is a very talented player with a lot of potential and a high ceiling. The Indianapolis Colts are up at pick number 22, and last time I had them selecting a quarterback because I do think Philip Rivers will retire after the season, but I think they'll give Jacob Eason a chance and select Liam Eichenberg with this pick. In my opinion, offensive tackle will be one of the Colts' biggest positions of need, and Eichenberg is arguably the best on the board. Anthony Costanzo probably won't be with the Colts for much longer, and he has dealt with injuries this season. The Colts are going to need a new long-term starting tackle, and I believe Eichenberg can be that guy. At number 23, we have the Cleveland Browns, and they have improved so much this season. After many years of just being terrible, the Browns have actually been pretty good this year. The secondary has been one of the weakest, if not the weakest point of the team this season, but they will be getting back a few players from injury next season, and it will likely get better. Linebacker is another big need for this team, so with this pick, I have the Browns selecting Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah. Owusu-Koramoah is having a fantastic season, and he has been one of the best linebackers in college football. He's obviously a very good linebacker, but can actually be a pretty good safety and is good in coverage as well. Owusu-Koramoah is a very talented player with a lot of potential, and this would be a very good pick for Cleveland. At number 24, we have the Pittsburgh Steelers, and Ben Roethlisberger has been talking about retirement for a while now, and being honest, I think this will be his last year in the NFL. The Steelers will have the option to start Mason Rudolph or pick up someone in free agency, but even if they do one of those things, they could still be looking for their next franchise quarterback, and with this pick, I have them selecting Mac Jones. Mac Jones has been arguably the best quarterback in college football this season, and there's a good chance he goes round 1, maybe even higher than number 24. Jones has solid arm talent and rarely misses on short and medium passes. He's a smart player who makes smart decisions with the football. Jones has been fantastic this season and has a good chance to win the Heisman Trophy, and if Roethlisberger really does retire after the year, I think Mac Jones could be a pretty good replacement. The Arizona Cardinals are up at pick number 25, and they've actually been pretty good this season. They look like they have a good chance to make the playoffs, but I still think they are a few pieces away from being a true contender. One of the positions I think they still need some help at is cornerback, so with this pick I have them selecting Tyson Campbell out of Georgia. Campbell is one of the more underrated cornerbacks that could be selected early in the upcoming draft class. He's surprisingly quick and has the ideal size for a cornerback. He has very good athleticism and is a very physical player. Patrick Peterson and Dre Kirkpatrick are both set to become free agents after the year, and the Cardinals need someone who can be their cornerback partner for Byron Murphy going forward. Campbell can be that guy, which is why I believe this pick makes sense. At number 22, we have the Baltimore Ravens, and I believe this team needs help on the offensive line, especially the interior positions. One of the reasons the Ravens' offense was so incredible last season was because of their fantastic offensive line, but after Marshall Yanda retired, it just hasn't been as good. The Ravens could definitely find the replacement for Yanda here, but instead I have them drafting a center in Creed Humphrey. Humphrey is an incredible center prospect, and the Ravens could use help at the position after they benched Matt Skura earlier this season due to multiple bad snaps. Humphrey is by far the best center prospect in the class, and in my opinion, he's the best interior offensive lineman in the class, which is why I had the Ravens selecting him rather than a guard. The Ravens need some help on the offensive line, and Humphrey is one of the best offensive linemen available. Because of the Jamal Adams trade a few months ago, the New York Jets are up with the 27th pick, and I do think that the Jets will take a quarterback with their first selection of the draft, even if that isn't Trevor Lawrence, but predicting the second pick is a little bit tougher. The cornerbacks for the Jets really aren't that great, and that is definitely an option at this point, but I think the Jets will rather find their new quarterback Justin Fields some weapons, so I have them selecting Travis Etienne. This pick would have worked a lot better if the Jets did select Lawrence, but even without him, I still think this pick works. Over the past few seasons, Travis Etienne has been one of the best running backs in college football. He's an elusive, speedy running back who has improved a lot as a receiver as well this season. Le'Veon Bell obviously left the Jets earlier this year, and Etienne could be a very good replacement. Etienne is arguably the best running back in this draft class, and I think he would be a very good addition to this New York offense. Next up is the Tennessee Titans, and I think wide receiver will be one of the biggest needs for this team. A.J. Brown is an incredible player, but other than him, the Titans really don't have anything too special at wide receiver. They do have Corey Davis, but he hasn't been incredible the past few seasons, and he's set to be a free agent after the year. I think the Titans will be looking for wide receivers with this pick, and I think they will select Rashad Bateman. Bateman was fantastic in 2019 and was doing pretty good this season before opting out to prepare for the draft. Bateman is an extremely explosive and talented player, and I think he would fit very well with an explosive offense that already has Derrick Henry and A.J. Brown. Next up, the Green Bay Packers are on the clock at pick number 29, and most people still believe this team will select a wide receiver in round 1, but after not selecting a wide receiver at all in last year's stacked wide receiver draft class, I truly don't believe they'll select any wide receivers until the second round, maybe even later than that. The Packers do need defensive line help, so with this pick, I'm taking USC's Jay Tufele. Tufele opted out of this college football season, but he was pretty dominant last year, and he was good the year before that as well. Tufele has been a good starter for USC, and I think he could help out this pretty weak Packers defensive line. The Buffalo Bills are up at pick number 30, and just like I said in my last mock, I think this team needs to draft cornerback. Tre'Davious White is a fantastic player, but the Bills need to find him a solid cornerback partner. Josh Norman has been fine this year, but he definitely isn't the long-term answer at the position, so with this pick I have the Bills selecting Shaun Wade. Wade has been a bit disappointing this year for Ohio State, but he has shown in the past he is a pretty good player with some potential. Wade has gone dominated on the outside of the season, but he was a very good player last season, and if the Bills are able to utilize him correctly, he could be a pretty good player in the NFL. At number 31, the New Orleans Saints are on the clock, and in my opinion, they're one of the most complete teams in the NFL, but in the few weeks that Drew Brees wasn't able to start, I noticed that this team may be looking for a new franchise quarterback. Taysom Hill didn't play incredible, and the Saints could be looking for the next Drew Brees. I do believe Brees will retire after the season, and I don't think Jameis Winston will sign a new contract to stay in New Orleans, which means the Saints will have Taysom Hill and not really anyone else. They could always sign a free agent quarterback, but I think they'd rather find some young talent through the draft. Kyle Trask is having a fantastic season for the Florida Gators, and he has solidified himself as one of the best quarterbacks in the nation and a Heisman contender. Trask is pretty good at throwing a deep ball, he's typically pretty accurate, and has good pocket presence. Trask has been fantastic this season, and if Drew Brees does retire after the year, the Saints should consider drafting Trask. And finally, at number 32, the Kansas City Chiefs are up, and I have them here because I honestly don't see any team stopping them. The Chiefs team has so much talent and will be towards the top of the NFL for years to come. Patrick Mahomes is already one of the greatest quarterbacks of all time, and the pieces around him are incredible as well. This team really doesn't need too much help anywhere, but one position that could use a little bit of improvement in my opinion is linebacker, so with this pick I'm going to go with Zaven Collins. Last time I had the Chiefs going with an offensive guard, and that is definitely still an option, but I wanted to change things up a little bit for my last mock, and I think linebacker is very possible. Zaven Collins is coming from a smaller school that doesn't often produce much NFL talent, but what Collins has done this season has been incredible. Collins was actually named college football's Defensive Player of the Year not too long ago. He can play all over the place on the defensive side of the ball, whether that be his natural linebacker position or that be at safety. He forces turnovers, he can bring pressure, and he is extremely athletic. You may not have heard about Collins before, but make sure to have his name on your draft radar because his name is going to be coming up a lot more in mock drafts over the next few months. And that's going to be it for my 2021 Christmas and holiday season NFL mock draft. Who will your team select, and who is missing from this mock draft? Please tell me in the comment section below. If you've made it this far in the video, thank you so much. I really appreciate you watching this far. Please remember to leave a like on this video and subscribe if you haven't already for more draft content in the future. I'm not completely sure when my next mock draft will come out, but I'm thinking it'll probably be on the day of the Super Bowl, just over a month from now, so make sure to tune in again then. Once again, thank you guys so much for watching this video, and I'll see you guys in my next video.